Awesome.
Great.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome, 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 welcome again to another live episode of Women Unleashed.
Yes.
This morning, Sunday morning for me in Australia and New Zealand for my beautiful guest. Saturday evening or afternoon if you are on the other side of the world. I want to welcome you, ladies, because and gentlemen. And this morning, I am so privileged to be sitting here as the woman who's asking questions to a woman who's got superpowers beyond my own imagination. And I have been looking forward to this conversation. For me, this is such an activator kind of way to begin my day and my week and my month, and it really gives me life. And there's a word that stands out for me today, which is regeneration, which is a big part of what my guest is going to be talking about. Now, Camilla is from New Zealand, and let me introduce her to you. She's a writer, an artist, a regenerative organic farmer, mother like me, and sought after coach and mentor to women globally. Her integrated and systemic methods are unique and inspire profound transformation in her clients. She holds dual citizenship in Australia and New Zealand and currently lives on a regenerative organic farm on the North Island of beautiful, majestic New Zealand that she is transforming into a living, breathing paradise with her partner. I can't wait to actually fly down there and check it out. Camilla Slater, good morning, my love. How are you?
Good morning, Grace. And what a lovely introduction and what a beautiful, beautiful energy you're bringing to the world each week with this fantastic Zoom kind of podcast that you're doing. Thank you so much. It's inspiring and it's fabulous. And I'm really honored to be here and it's lovely to talk with you today. So thanks.
And so am I. Thank you so much for giving us the time. I know it's Sunday for you and it is middle of the morning. We are privileged. Camilla, they say what you speak of is what's inside of you, and you speak of so many beautiful things about myself, about the world, about the people that you work with, your clients, and it's very reflective of who you are. But I know as someone who's been doing this for a couple of years now, speaking with women who are, super powerful and healers and authors and coaches, you didn't get here as beautiful as you are. There were some really, really dark times.
Yeah.
Now, before I ask Camilla a question, I just want to give this quick caveat to those who are tuning in. This is Women Unleashed, and what we do here is we create intergenerational transformation. And to do that, we go into the backstory of what happened so that we can get into the transformation and the rebirth of who we truly are and what we're capable of. And the reason for that is because, especially for the women listening to this, is we are made to change the world.
Yes.
And to change the world, we reinvent, we change ourselves, we transform ourselves. And my job, as well as my guests, is to show you different ways and different reasons to go into that journey and follow your divine calling. Camilla, take us through some of really the story of Camilla Slater, please.
Okay, well, I'll do it in a way. Thank you, Grace. I'll do it in a way that's hopefully mindful and compassionate towards other people involved who have, I think when we talk about issues to do with our past and trauma, there's a mindfulness that we need to bring to the table, and that concerns and relates to other people, to family members, and to systems and communities and extensions beyond ourselves. So I like to be mindful of that. In saying that, what I will say is that I come from a massively difficult and traumatic background. I don't come from a poverty-stricken background initially. I came from a kind of ordinary middle-class background in Australia, and I grew up very heavily indoctrinated in the Catholic Church. And with that, so I'm one of 8 children, and with that, I was exposed to some really great stuff around the development of faith and the development of mysticism in the human psyche and the human spirit, which is, I think, really important to women. I think it's very much a part of what I do in my coaching. So I have a great indebtedness to Catholicism for that, even though I am in no way a practicing Catholic today. But the actual discipline and practice of faith is what I learned from my background, and that's the good that I take out of that. So that being said, I unfortunately experienced a lot of the darkness of Catholicism as well. So there was a great endemic exposure and experiencing of early infantile sexual abuse. So the abuse history that I experienced started at that time when, you know, it could have even been pre-verbal from the kind of work that I've done on myself. So it started very early on, and it carried throughout my life, really into kind of adulthood. So the repetition and the bundling and kindling neurophysiologically of the issues that were set in me as an infant continued on and on and on for many years of my life. And, you know, so that's my story in a nutshell. But in as well as that, there are other rich components. And, you know, I was incredibly intelligent at school and academically gifted, and I was able to find solace in my mind and creativity. And so those were my kind of my areas of safety, if you want. There was a lot of violence in my background as well. My father had actually trained in the Vatican. So he had trained as a priest in the Vatican, and most of his and many of his close friends were either priests or had been through Propaganda Fide Seminary, which is the primary seminary for those earmarked for bishopry and cardinalship in the church. They used to go to Propaganda Fide College, and that was kind of looked over at the papal quarters. So you're talking about kind of like really, really the actual center of the Catholic scene, in a sense. And that was my father's education. He was a Western suburb Sydney boy who was the eldest son of a Catholic family. And so there was a lot of kind of intermingling with that Catholic world in a way that was both positive and extremely destructive and extremely negative. And the impact of that on me, and I don't want to talk for others, but the impact on me personally wasn't good at all. So there are a lot of trauma, a lot of stuff. I did end up homeless as well. So that was an experience. And of course, when I talk about that repetition and bundling and kindling neurophysiologically of set patterns within us, what I'm talking about is we become templated as women for ongoing abuse.
Yeah.
And this filters out into gravitation towards unhealthy relating, unhealthy partners, unhealthy ways of behaving, unhealthy boundaries, no boundaries. And if that continues, we end up in destitution and in institutions and in the kinds of places that are really, when you're really beyond the capacity for regeneration.
Yeah.
So somehow I made it out of all that, and somehow, well, I know why, but you know, so I see myself as really lucky to have been able to restore myself and restore my life, and then help other women to do the same. It's just a wonderful, wonderful gift, you know. So
Wow.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
a miracle. You say you use the word somehow,
yeah.
like
Quite
somehow, but
strategic, really.
it's really not somehow, is it? Like there is an intention there, and I love how you keep it really tangible in a way that you use the words. We become templated
Yeah,
neurophysiologically
yeah.
by the things that we, because I truly believe when we come out, we are pure,
Yes,
as babies, and then yes, the things around us template us, and not just in our minds, but neurophysiologically. And when we get so lost, and for many people that may be listening, is
yeah,
that, like you say, this can really lead to a state in life where sometimes for some they just don't know the way out. And you talk about somehow, and you feel you are really lucky. I feel, when I was there was always a time in my life This is before I delved into personal development
Mm.
years and years ago. I remember thinking this for the first time, probably when I was like 7 or 8. And it was just, I just thought that for a long, long time. It was a simple thing. I thought that I was always born under the lucky stars.
Yeah.
And now I think back to that belief. I don't know where I got it from. It must be from, the deep seated into my soul. I think about it and I relate to what you say. Somehow I got out and I feel really lucky. But
Yeah.
I know that there is that in the core of a woman who's like you, like most women probably would not survive
No,
repetition, intense repetition of
I
such
think it is.
darkness. Yeah. So Camilla, please take me through this, the transition, the liminal space where you have started to make decisions that I need to change this.
Well, it was really a process of deduction. So it was reductive as opposed to being born out of choice in a sense. But one thing that's really interesting, Grace, is that when you talk about this sense of feelings if you're born under the lucky stars, as a teenager, at 16, I remember walking home one day, and at that point, I was going through chronic abuse, and I've been through all sorts of stuff in terms of, yeah, I think my biography, I talk about rape and gang rape and homelessness and destitution, and that was later. But I was already kind of caught up in that, these kinds of incidents happening beyond the 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 realm of the family out into the community. So bad things were happening, and I was walking home, and what I did feel was that I had a very deep-seated and tiny sense that one day, I know this is all going to make sense to me. And one day I'm going to understand why I am reacting and acting the way that I react and act. One day I will find why this is the case. And so my life's really been reductive in a sense. So I really ended up, it started in the late 80s and it continued on until the 90s, the mid 90s, end of the 90s, where I really went through a process of kind of incredible destitution. So more gang rapes. A friend was murdered up in Sydney's King's Cross. I was homeless and sleeping on the streets, and not at all the kind of woman I am today. Not at all. There is no comparison between, there was a spark, but there was really no comparison between how I was living, the kinds of actions I took on a daily basis, and the kind of woman that I am today, which is filled with embodied praxis and value and a deep sensibility about my worth and about the worth of all humanity. And so I didn't live in that space. It was there in me somewhere, but it was unreachable. What did happen was that woman was murdered, and she and I had been just friends, but it really shook me up. And I knew that I was at a kind of a real turning point where that was all that was left for me. That was the next port of call. And most of the women that I actually have did know from that time aren't alive today. And if they are, they're actually really disempowered and living in incredible states of disrepair, discardance, homelessness, even insanity, because of the impact of the way that they're living on their psyche and on their being. So somehow I got out and I chose to go up to a particular kind of residential community and learn how to live again and learn how to find my way. And I spent really, the 90s, and from then on, I've just been on as I said, it started in the late 80s, but I've really just been on my own spiritual journey. And through that process, I've learned about the holistic nature of the human being. I've learned about somatics. So that comes into the work that I do as a coach. So I work somatically and I work bottom up with women. I've developed a kind of an approach that's called embodied praxis, which is born out of what you're talking about when you said you felt like you're in tune with the lucky stars. And it's about actually working from deep within yourself and knowing how to tap into that and knowing how to align with that in a very practical way, not just woo woo. I am a bit woo woo, but in a very practical way, so that what we have is, in the coaching process, a deep sense of attunement, and attunement moves beyond empathy. Attunement is about an organic response to the client and to the women that I coach, so that I'm always one step ahead, in a sense, in terms of being able to perceive and understand. And that comes from the somatics work that I've done. It also comes from my own lived experience and practical experience with healing myself. And it's stuff that I take really, really seriously in an integrated manner. So when we're talking about regenerative practices and regenerative principles and an integrated approach to coaching, I deal with the whole woman. And that means nothing's off the table. Women come to me with one issue, usually. One issue, and it unravels, and I talk about unraveling, so it becomes this beautiful process. So that's kind of what I've done with myself, and in doing that, it's involved creative pursuits. I was a professional artist in Australia, so I had exhibitions and I sold work, and that was really fantastic, and I did that for many years. And then I've had periods of expansion all the time. I've never really been one to find the thing and then straitjacket myself into that. So my life is a reflection of that integration, in a sense, and showing women how to live meaningfully in a number of different areas. And you do that when you release trauma, because when you release trauma, you increase embodied praxis and you increase humanistic energy and spiritual energy and mystical energy within yourself, which is just great. So I love it. Yeah, it's fantastic. Yeah.
I love that. And you know what? I love this conversation because for a couple of things. But the first thing I'm going to mention is that so many of the women that watch this are authors, coaches, healers, multi-passionate entrepreneurs, and those who have a dream and those who believe in themselves without being able to label what that belief is, but just that sparkle, that spark that we talk about. And the other, just the spoiler on those dreams and those positive belief system is that we seem to have this, this modern cultural conditioning that we need to focus on the one thing that we're really, really good at and enhance that. And while that's all good and great, you were just showcasing to us, Camilla, like you said, I was expanding, I was growing, and at the same time, reintegrating, regenerating myself. And what that looks, you are the epitome of honoring all of who you are and not really caring about, oh, people said that I have to focus on one thing so I can be successful at making money, becoming a businesswoman, or making a difference. And the hard thing about that is when we listen to what other people think has worked for them and should work for everyone, is that we get so confused. And I think that what you're showing us is that, like, like you just said, everyone that you can remember from that time in your life back in King's Cross, is either they really have, they're in a state of disrepair, and
That's
but
right.
you have honored um, everything that is in you, the light, the dark, and every possibility. And now you're able to, when you describe, I take the woman as a whole, they come to me with one issue, but we go so deep, that and you're always one step ahead. And I think the reason that you're one step ahead is because you have all of the parts. You're
Yeah.
not, so I'm really speaking to those who are listening here, who's very tunnel visioned about, I think I am a coach for business people. I think I am a coach for lifestyle people. I think I am a coach for self sabotage. I want you to just open that mind just a little bit and expand it to the infinite potential. That what if all your gifts are in the periphery of where you are looking straight ahead right now?
it's fantastic what you're talking about, because that's exactly what I do with women. And one of the things was that when I started coaching many years ago and coaching women, and believe me, I started off as a kind of adherent to probably more psychotherapeutic dynamics. And I moved away from those because I felt that what they did unintentionally, even though they have a very important place, was that there was a stigmatizing of the woman, and there was a stigmatizing through the therapeutic dyad that leads to a disempowerment and a power imbalance. And what I found was with the coaching model, while that can happen if someone's unskilled with their coaching, so coaching is not perfect, it's not the new, it depends on the coach. But what I did find was that there was a greater capacity for exchange and dynamism and communication in a very human way that wasn't present with psychological and psychotherapeutic models, because of the boundary constraints of the profession. And while they're really important, they're absolutely important, and hopefully coaches bring those in a very mindful way to their own practice and their own practices, there is a dynamism in coaching that really excites me. And so I really love that. On the other issue, that what I kind of want to say about a holistic and integrated approach is that when we focus and when we streamline our thinking, and when we move on a linear path, which is the prevailing coaching model, by the way, that's out there, what we do is we restrict and we reduce our capacity for full fruition and for full fecundity as a spiritual, emotional, physical, cognitive, mystical being. And if we reduce ourselves and if we reduce our capacities in that way, we will eventually fall off. We won't be able to sustain it. We will become disenchanted, and we will find that there are areas and aspects of ourselves that are not met, not loved internally, and not embraced and accepted. So what I do is I start with the one issue, and then we move into, I work with women in a way that's it's similar to some therapeutic models in some ways, but I go way beyond what I've seen in some more classic kind of psychological models. And I work with various aspects, but I do so in a way that leads to much greater internal respect and harmonizing and integration within. And this in turn, when this happens within us as human beings and as women, the amazing thing is that it then starts happening in our families, and it starts happening in our communities, it starts happening in our pets, and it starts happening in our animals, and it starts happening in our gardens, and it starts happening in our lives. And this is what I'm kind of, this is how I coach women. So I coach women in business. I coach women in family issues. I coach women in life issues, spiritual matters. I coach them in whatever issues they come to me with. And then invariably it expands out. And the great thing too with most of my coaching clients is that they end up staying for a long time. And that is because it works. And there has to be, from the coach's perspective, it is important we take on a vocational role if we're coaching. And it's extremely important that if we take the money and we have that mercantile aspect to it, that we deliver. And I go beyond the templated coaching course for that reason. I go beyond, and this is when I talked about attunement before. I'll use coaching courses, and I've certainly got a, Healing Trauma 101 course, which is a great 12-week course on offer, on my website, and women do it and they get incredible amount out of it. But the real glimmer and the real jewel of that course is the weekly coaching, where we come together each week and I work with women who may not be able to afford one-to-one coaching with me. So they can come in a group and they can actually experience what it is to start working with their bodies as a system in a way that's going to move them beyond singularity and move them beyond a restricted view of who they are. Because we want you to be abundant. We want you to get a sense of this incredible joy within you. We want you to feel the life force. We want you to feel inspired. We want women, and we want women over 40 to feel as if, yes, exactly. Women over 40, beyond, the traditional point within our Western culture and in so many cultures is that we over 40, over childbearing, we're no longer valid. We no longer have a place. And yet what I believe is that systemically and most importantly globally at the moment, it is the imbalance of the feminine, not feminist, because I am not a feminist. I want to make that really clear. The imbalance of the feminine and masculine energies that is happening in the world at the moment that is creating some of the disastrous kind of policies that we see. So when I talk about systemic and regenerative practices, this is what I'm talking about. And this is, and we can weave it into our lives just by starting with planting a seed on our kitchen sill and watching it grow. And we do that with our own hearts too. That's what it's about. Yeah.
I love. You just wrapped that up with a beautiful sparkle when you said we can start small with a seed in our kitchen sill, and then we're talking here. You're
Started
essentially
small. I started on a pension. I was on a pension. I went to Centrelink in Australia. I was homeless. I was in supported accommodation. I had nothing. I had lost connection with my family. I had nobody. And I had a woman across the road from that supported accommodation place in Byron Bay who actually believed in me just a little bit. And she is a friend and a wonderful woman to this day in my life. And this is the stuff that we do. We start from anywhere. That being said, it's not a choice that everyone wants to make, unfortunately, because it's a road, it's a path, and it's tough at times to
yeah. And
transform.
often it's not really a paved path per se. You've got to chop and cut out these really big twigs and branches and
Absolutely, yeah.
with no tools, even with your bare
It
hands.
happens. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's why it's scary. But like you said, Camilla, you are the epitome of full regeneration. Because like you said, you started for the women who are listening from a different part of the world. Let's just clarify a little bit of lingo here. Centrelink and pension means that you might be on food stamps or
Absolutely.
public assistance, that's that kind of thing if you're in the United States. And so that level of destitution. But what I love about what you were just talking about is it is really the nucleus of intergenerational transformation.
Yeah, very much.
Yeah, because when you say, yeah, it's for a long time. Like women, you're no longer childbearing. You're like done. But then the truth is, like you said, it's disgraceful, the imbalance. Let me just say this. It's disgraceful, the imbalance between the masculine and the feminine in our world. Like women are what was Hillary Clinton saying? The most untapped reservoir of talent in the world, which is
Right.
an understatement. Like the world is really in need of us to it's not the world's fault. It may even be partly our fault because we chose this as a collective, and now is our choice. And Camila, I want to ask you about when you work with women. You mentioned you work with women about business, about spirituality, about relationships, about health
And trauma,
and trauma. Yeah, and when you work with them, it's you talked about vocation. And I feel like vocation is at the core of abundance because your life now is really paradise. Is if I may
in the making.
yeah, in the making.
In the making, because this looks beautiful on screen and everything, but outside we have no kitchen in our home. We have outside dirt mounds everywhere. We have I can hear my husband, who's an ex-businessman, semi-retired, and now is out on the tractor in dirty old shorts, because that's what it takes to build a paradise. So we've planted trees, we've got stuff happening. It is, I drive a really nice car, I've got a really beautiful jewelry, all that kind of stuff. But we still live in a state of creation and expansion. So that's our jam. That's how we want to live. And we've resown the soil here. So the soil was just blitzed by Roundup on our farm, and which is just standard for most farming techniques and stuff to kill insects and kill bugs and stuff. So we have a very different system. We have a regenerative agricultural system in place now, where we have cattle and cattle living beautifully on the land, and beautiful post and rail fencing. So we're living in a paradise, but it's a paradise in the making. And again, I want to stress that somehow we want to find this. It's almost like the helix within us scientifically. We want to find this cyclical capacity to regenerate and rejuvenate ourselves constantly. And we want to be able to live in that place. And it's a discomforting place. It's actually not a place of comfort. But what we want to do over time is we want to be able to live in that place, because this is our creative nature as human beings, to live with that kind of expansiveness. So we have our rest points, of course, but the dynamism comes from being able to live in an embodied sense and a spiritually grounded sense in that place of dynamism. And that's what it's about. So really interesting, because we're looking at the two polarities. We're looking at dynamism, and we're looking at embodiment and attunement and the inner alignment of the chakras. And we're looking at the stability of your body somatically, and your mind, and fusion with your mind and your heart. And you want to be able to live with stillness and with energy. So it's more Eastern in its kind of, which you may well be aware of, more Eastern in its philosophical underpinnings, and very important and very much needed in the West, where we operate on binaries. So the single vision at the exclusion of everything else. And when you look at Hinduism, or you look at some of the other ancient religions and things, you're looking at a mystical realm that involves a pantheon of gods that are expressions of the great richness that lies within us as a community of souls. And I do community of souls work with my clients as well, who want to. So this is about the expansion of the self into a new kind of form that moves beyond, sorry if I'm getting a bit academic here, but moves beyond the Enlightenment model born out of 14th, 15th, 16th century Judeo-Christian tradition, even though I have Christian clients, which, I'm open to all religions. But we do some work that actually moves people into an acceptance and an embrace of the complexities of themselves beyond just a singularity. And that in turn leads to a greater acceptance of other human beings and other women in their diverse ways. Beautiful, wow. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful process for women to unlock the strictures of their own restricted thinking and their own bound hearts, So so that's what I'm on about. That's what I do. That's how great, how fantastic.
Oh man, yeah. It's so, let me just say this. I am feeling so inspired right now. Like, I feel so good right now. So I want to take a moment to breathe, just to center myself. But I want to share with you, you were saying there about, the sense of unshakability, but also fluidity. Those kinds of two polarities meld together. And I started to sense this in myself when I was in my early 20s, I think it was. And
Beautiful. Yeah.
it was in a strange, it happened in a strange way, because you talk about having grown up with a Catholic upbringing and whatnot, which I did too. I remember my grandma's sister was a nun. She passed away last year. Bless her
Okay.
soul.
So,
It was really fun because she would come home every year or so for a week, and she'd
yep,
get me
yep.
to pull out her white hair for 25 cents. So it was really, and she would take me to mass like twice in a row. So I learned the whole mass scripture. I could recite it myself. Like I knew what was the priest was going to say next.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
in that sense, I had this deep, ingrained Catholic upbringing. And I didn't have a dad since I was 3. But then one day he came to my work when I was 21 years old or something. And one
Wow.
of the crew members said, "Hey, Mom Grace, you have a visitor." And I said, "Who is it?" I'm not explaining. "It's your father." I'm like, "My father?" And this is the most interesting thing. And this is why I tell this story. Is because Dad passed away early last year. Papa, I may, if I might correct myself, we didn't really have a long relationship, but I feel that he is probably the second closest person to me, um, next to my brother. But anyway, he came to visit me, and so it was really awkward. You can imagine, but I love him anyway. So I sat there and I said, "Hi, pa, kumusta?" Which is, "How are you?" And then he said to me, "Look, I'm here because I just wanted to let you know that I've gone back to Islam." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't know you were Muslim to start with.
Yeah,
I thought you were a Catholic like me." And he said, "No, we were all born Islam." And this, so he went on this big whole long story about how we were this and that. And so obviously I was more confused than ever. And that was that, right? And then so when I was turning 40, this is now 19 years later on, I go back to the Philippines and I meet him again. And he says to me, "I've become ordained as a bishop for an Orthodox church." And this is like, 6.5 years ago. And that was the moment when I realized, because I was starting in my journey then in personal development,
yeah,
is that my dad is a spiritual seeker just like me.
yeah, yeah.
And it was the coolest moment, one of the coolest moment in my life, to really have that connection with him. Because
Yeah.
when I realized, well, it doesn't matter if you go back to Islam or this or that, you are seeking spiritual, connection just like I am, and we all are in our own ways, and we are all one and connected at the end of the day. And it was really, really cool. I love that moment.
Oh, beautiful. I mean, it really is. And I think that, I mean, what I love about what you're communicating here is the incredibly I want to talk about restoring, and this is to do with creating and recreating your life and stuff. So what you've just given is a really great example of restoring yourself and restoring what could be adversity. So I'm not saying, but interestingly enough, what I'm hearing is, so nothing to do. You could actually, in a sense, get stuck in abandonment and neglect as your primary core issue. But what you've done is instead you've gone through that process evidently, and you've moved into a celebration of who the man was, and you've found meaning. And this is really central to women and their healing. How do we find meaning? How do we restore adversity? How do we move so that, the issue of neglect or abandonment or estrangement can actually become our fodder and our fuel, in the same way that we put organic matter on the soil? How do we, the same way we put water on that little seed that you're all going to go out and buy and put on your windowsill after this talk? How do we do that? How do we restore ourselves? And if you want to change and transform yourself and other people, this is what we're called to do. This is what we must do. And this is what we end up wanting to do. We want to transform beyond a particular vision or restricted view of our history into one that involves expansion, peace, acceptance, meaning, philosophical wisdom, mystical components, symbolism. We want to find that rich place in ourselves where we get to actually restore. And so in that sense, what I'm on about, and this is when I get a bit woo-woo, is what I'm on about is moving you outside the temporal realm, beyond space and time, into a realm that actually involves history, future, and present in a fused state. And that is what Buddhist monks do. That is what Catholic priests do, and monks who go on retreat do. That is what you do if you're cloistered. You try to reach this state of all and oneness, where you move beyond space and time, and you fuse with the great Atma, as it's known in Vedantic scriptures, or the great Buddha, as it's known in Buddhist, scriptures, or God, as it's known in Christian, and we try to reside there. And restoring is a really important part of that. Restoring is really essential. And on that note, one of the things that I want to say is that what we have at the moment, I think socioculturally, which is problematic, is a consideration of our histories in a way that is almost romancing them. So what I find is that many women come to me and they've been stuck on trauma issues or issues for many, many years, and these have impacted their success in business, their capacity for relating and relationships. They've been stuck, in terms of how they parent. They might be stuck in terms of their capacity for intimacy, for sexual relationship that is meaningful and moves beyond just the physical act into deep mystical and sensual realms within themselves. They might find that they're unable to resource a community around them. They might be isolated. They might have food and eat. A lot of women come to me because of food and eating disorders issues, and they're successful women. They're working in the workplace and they've got hidden issues. And so what happens is, when we go down certain paths, we can romance our trauma in a way that's unhealthy for us. And the latest science also looks at that in a new way. And unfortunately, I think that this is where I think that the psychopathologization of adversity over the 20th and into the 21st century is quite problematic. And it started with the advent of psychiatry. And while psychiatry's made some really beautiful changes, I'm not against psychiatry and I don't have an opinion on it. It's made some beautiful changes. We do know that it was a kind of, it did have a patriarchal underpinning to it that was very much about the medicalization of women and women's presentations to do with trauma or abuse or difficulty or domestic violence and stuff. And that goes back to Charcot, it goes back to Freud. Jung broke away from that, and Jung offered us an incredible service in that he started to work internally with women and men as a more kind of in a more systemic kind of approach, with these archetypes and stuff. But I think that socioculturally we're at a bit of a turning point. I hope that women out there who are listening, if you're coaching, and if if you're looking for a coach, whatever you're doing, or if you're just interested, that you understand that getting lodged in your trauma and getting lodged in your story is a very, very dangerous place to be. And it's not a good place. And we have to find a way forward that's meaningful so that we move to reflect on the trauma, but we do so in a way that's with a light touch. And we do it in a way that's present, mindful, attuned, and this is what I talk about, attunement, and quite sacred in a sense, because we're tapping into some pretty gory stuff at times, and we want to tread carefully in that realm. One of the things that women can do inadvertently is too much talking about our stories can in fact further cement those neural pathways that are going to create further bundling and kindling of trauma within the system and further disrupt. And so you get into a kind of what I call a cascade effect, where you keep on re-traumatizing yourself by telling this story all the time. You go off to this therapist and keep talking, and this therapist. So we want to get you to a place where you're able to talk about it, but you're able to also move beyond it and re-story beyond it and find meaning. Really important. And that brings me to just one other thing I'll just say, because I'm rabbiting on a bit, but just how important it is. My personal view, honestly, is not everyone is supposed to be a coach. And I need to really say, not everyone is supposed to do this work. And there are a lot of people at the moment who are kind of, they're going to be coaches, they're going to be coaches. And I love the enthusiasm, but we are dealing with the sacred realm of humanity here. And it is a vocation, and it requires, in my view, human beings who have made massive transformation and who have trodden the path of transformation already. So if you're not out the other end of that transformative path, if you're still struggling in really massive areas with food, with addictions, with alcohol, I don't believe that and I think that, I'm hoping that eventually we get to a point where we're able to really be honest with ourselves about where we're at, because we're dealing with people, and we want to actually make, this realm as authentic and as real and as just as, I think, spiritually sound as possible. Authentic and ethical. I'm talking about ethics here, the ethics, and we need to go into ourselves and look at ourselves to see if we really, on that note, I know that you've done, I'm not in any way reflecting on you. I love your work, and I've watched you for a long time now, and I've watched quite a lot of your lives, and I have a great respect for what you're doing, Grace, and the level of work you've done on yourself, because it's evident. You feel it in people. You feel it.
Yes.
You
I
feel
love
the
how you
love.
yeah, it's so I love to work, to do deep work. I mean, if
Yeah.
people used to ask me, if you were to come with a warning label, what would you come with? And I always say, not for the faint-hearted, because I don't really care about how far you've come intellectually. I have been surrounded by that all my life.
Yep. Yep.
It's all about how willing you are to come down from that intellect down into holistically your heart and your soul. And I love how you bring that up, because the crux of abundance, I think, let's talk about ethics, for example. I think and we're not gonna in the interest of time,
Yeah.
so we'll touch on a few more minutes. We could go on here for days, but I think one of the biggest reasons why we find ourselves now here in this era of our life on earth is a lot to do with letting go of ethics, and in all fields of industries,
Yeah.
medicine, entertainment, arts, law. It's just the ethics have gone out the window because of commercialism, because of capitalism, and and I guess the last thing I wanna say about what you said, Camilla, that I love, is that the crux of abundance really is not about, oh, that's where the money is, then I'll do that. But it's not really. It's just because coaching is somehow you're attracted to it. It just means that it's a potential in a big field, but working, doing the work is the expansion. Doing the work is the creative process. Doing the work is the discovery. Doing the work is the actual privilege of being able to remove all the roundup on the soil and be able to replace that with the natural stuff, and be able to create for however long it takes, like what you're doing where you are. Like, I feel like we need to let go of a conditioning where is the quickest and the fastest way to reach XYZ, which is very templative again, instead of fluid.
Yeah.
And it's really, really, really important. This kind of inspiration is off the charts next level, because so many women are confused.
And so many women, what the thing, the thing is, I hate to break the news, but there's no fast track. You can have, I mean, coaching helps you to speed up the process. But like I said, many of my coaching clients have been with me for 10 years. So it's woven, and I have a coach, it's woven into our lives as a sensibility and a way of living that's about ongoing transformation, not arrival at a spot, not a rival at a place. And the other thing about it is, and I love what you're talking about here, I think that you're spot on. I think the loss of ethics and values, the loss of values that underpins what we do and how we do it, it really has given way to commercialism and mercantilism. And I'm not saying that's not important. We all need money. Yes. Money is great. We all need money. We love money. We love abundant money, and we do like that. But that it needs to be placed in perspective. And you don't get to where I'm at or where you've arrived at in terms of a degree of kind of self-actualization without long-standing capacity for, discipline, for, there's real grounded kind of approaches that you need to take. Discipline, praxis, morning programs, a willingness to do the work, and industriousness. And these things have become almost unfashionable. And my wish is to see women embrace these along with the mystical and the spiritual, and along with the compassionate, and along with the heartfelt. And I think that coaching's been a really masculinized industry and profession. The sales out there and everything's a very masculinized driven. And you see these women who are really doing it, full on. And, I've been through a bit of that. And, and I ended up kind of coming to a place which was much more important and much more authentic for me, which is, I know authenticity's even become commercialized. That's the great, the great thing. But you want to find out who you are through this process. That's what it's about. And you want to be really true to yourself. And how I live isn't going to be right for someone else. So when I work with clients and I work with women, I don't work with women so that they become successful, artists and writers and coaches, just like me, who live on a regenerative farm with their second husband and, have a son and have lots of animals, and we run the Miniature Belted Galloway Society of New Zealand here now, and and I drive a really great car, and and the house is going to be renovated in 5 years. That's all my plan. That's all my process. That's specific to my life and where I come from and the destitution I come from, and what I've evolved and grown through. So my expansion, what I'm on about, and it could take me anywhere, is specific to what the gods have in store for me. And my job as a coach, and I believe our job as coaches, is to help women find precisely that wonderful point of kind of refracted expansion in themselves, where they find what it is that makes them glimmer, makes them spark and jewel, makes them, fluorescent with love and with joy and with an expansive energy that's creative and professional and grounded in good values, really good values about treating their clients well, treating, whatever they're doing, however, treating their children well, treating their partner well, whatever, treating the world well. It just seems to be that, and that's what I'm on about. That's what my writings are about on Wise Women Sisterhood, not Wild Women Sisterhood. Apparently there's a page, one's Wise Women Sisterhood. It's for women over 40. For older women, we rock. We're fantastic, yes.
Camilla, where can we find Wise Women Sisterhood, and how can we work with you and also just connect with you, please?
Okay, thank you for that. That's lovely for you to offer that. Okay, so I have a website, camillaslater.com. People actually approach me through that via the email there. My email address is camilla@camillaslater.com. The other way that you can connect with me is via Facebook. I've got quite a presence on Facebook. I run the Wise Women Sisterhood Facebook page. It's a business page. Every day, and I write it all myself. I put up beautiful art and I put up beautiful paintings, not by me, sourced, and I put up writings that I write. So usually there's poetry each day, and that's part of my morning program, where I actually center, and I have a a kind of poem for the day that grounds me and centers me on women and on what we can maybe consider, how I can inspire women today. So that's Wise Women Sisterhood page. And then there's the Wise Women Sisterhood Facebook group as well. And that's smaller. You can join that for free. You can access my videos and lives through Wise Women Sisterhood Facebook page and through the Facebook group. And that's the best way. You can also access my courses through, there's another course coming up in the next couple of months. Healing Trauma 101 will be available. Well, that's, you can sign up to that anytime. So that's a 12-week course where you get 3 months of weekly coaching with me. I think it works out at about $400 or $500 for 12 weeks. And that's my service to women course, because my rates are can be difficult for some women to afford. So that's an opportunity for women to get the kind of stuff that they've heard from me today. You want to change, you want to really change, you want to really transform, you come on board with this stuff and you start to actually work with me. And you can do that in a group. We have things like, I'll do like in that course, at different times we'll do things like we'll do a hot seat coaching where someone is coached for 20 minutes one-to-one with me, which they might not otherwise be able to access. So this is my service to women as well. So that works out pretty well for women, pretty great. And then there's the one-to-one coaching that they can access and through the website as well. So that can be purchased through the website, and they can also messenger me. So just messenger me through Facebook. Don't be shy. Messenger, reach out, and let's see what we can do. And yeah. So it's great. And I do actually just speak to women. Like on Messenger. So yeah, I have assistants. I have moderators in groups, that kind of stuff. But most of the time, I try to. If there's someone who's repeatedly wanting to connect with me or wants coaching or it is me. I will, I'm very big on that. And that's what about the kind of ethics and values with which I approach my work. It's really important to maintain that attunement, as I said, so yeah. So thank you. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Well, I just want to clarify, Camilla Slater is double L, and go ahead and join Wise Women Sisterhood Facebook group. It sounds amazing.
Yes.
And when she talks about hot seat coaching, what's wonderful about those things is that even though if you don't get the 20-minute or the 5 minutes hot seat spot, is that you get to listen to other people being hot seated or laser coached, and so it's wonderful. Camilla, before you leave me and the beautiful audience, I want to. I have this vision of a seed in our kitchen sill. So let's. I'm visioning a woman over 40 who's now going to begin today with a journey of expansion and unconditional self-love. I want to ask you for one last insight and wisdom to all women who have been listening and will be listening to this conversation. What do you have for us as a last words of inspiration?
What I would say is really heartfelt is that if I can transform in the way that I have, it is absolutely within your volition and within your power and within your possibility to improve where you are right here and right now if you want to. And that doesn't necessarily involve coming on board with me as a coach. That can be an option. What it involves is that you can take the small step, go and buy the seed, go and put the plant on the windowsill, choose the nice food, work from a place within yourself that's loving, not harsh. Dispel with the harsh words. It's time for them to go, and be true to who you were really meant to be. The gods wanted you here. The world wants you here to be bright and loving and joyful, and you want that too. So find ways to be that and to live in that space, because you can. And if I've done it, you can do it. And if Grace has done it, you can do it. And so we're here as a community of women to inspire you to do the same. So lots of love. Take care. Yeah.
Whew. Thank you, everyone. We love you,
Yeah.
and we will see you again in the next episode of Women Unleashed.
Bye for now. Thank you so much, Grace. You're a gem.